I've done plenty of videos on cutting rebar up, but here's one on putting it back together again. Hello boys and girls, today we are looking at Makita's cordless rebar tying tool, the DTR180. Now it looks really sort of cumbersome and top heavy, but it's actually a very light tool. This is very light. It's not a big heavy thing like a rebar cutter, that's for sure. Now I have not purchased this tool, I have borrowed it from somebody, but it's brand new still, and it's been sitting here for weeks and I haven't used it. But nobody's been able to use anything in this country for weeks anyway, so it's all good. So what I'm going to do is have a look at how this thing works. We'll do some tying with it, of course. We'll work out how to get everything threaded in. I'll show you all the fancy little bits. And yeah, we'll have a bit of a play with it. They're not a DIY tool, they're a specialist tool. It's not a home gamer tool. Price-wise, this is a hefty investment. So without further ado, let's get tying. Well, we're not going to do the tying now, are we? I'm going to tell you how it works and set it all up and everything. So as you can see, there's lots of little pieces to go wrong with this. It's a very intricate tool with a lot of moving parts. The trigger has a trigger lock on it there. This is actually a 14 and 18 volt tool, so that's interesting. You can use the 14.4 volt batteries on it as well, if you are from a place that still uses such technology. So to put it real simple, like, you thread the wire through there. There's a couple of gears here that pull it through the tool. The wire will then come out the front here, curl down, wrap around your wire, cut itself, and then this area in here will twist the wire and tie it off and pull it up tight. It's a pretty nifty tool, but it's one of those tools that's going to need a little bit of TLC. It's going to get the hell beaten out of it on the sort of jobs you use rebar tying for, but it needs to also be looked after. There's a lot of moving parts. You're going to have to clean this fairly regularly. Well, not that regularly. You've got to clean it out. It does come with a little cleaning tool here, which you thread through and helps clean out where it cuts the wire and all the little metal bits of shit build up. But also you're going to have to pull this apart from time to time. There's an Allen key in the tool here for taking all these covers and everything off and giving it a blowout or replacing any knackered, worn out parts. Now if you turn it on with a battery that is flat, this is what happens. So it's not happy. She's beeping away at you, and you've got a number 4 down the bottom here, except it's got to be held this way up, except it's really hard to get on the camera there, but there's a number 4 there. So it's doing that. Your battery's flat, change your battery. Pretty simple. If you put on a battery that is charged, you'll get that noise. It's it just calibrating itself, putting all its bits in the right place, getting ready to tie your wire for you. Next to the power switch here we have 2 modes. We have a single tie looking one and a double tie looking one. That doesn't mean it does 1 wrap or 2 wraps. This is single actuation, and this is like rapid fire or bump fire on your nail gun. You won't have to pull the trigger with this one. When it triggers via these, I'm not going to push it obviously at the moment, but when you push on there it will automatically fire off. We'll show you that in a moment. Down at the base of the tool we have a setting for how tight you want to pull it. If you do it too tight you're going to break your wire, so as you go along you'll learn the best setting for what size rebar you're doing and how many you're wrapping around. You've got settings there from 1 through to 6, and you can go up and down through those settings. Seems a bit unnecessary. They could have just gone one button would have done it, but that's nice that they've done both, so you can just go up and down and save having to push a button more times than you need to. Now I'll show you how to thread some wire through this thing. You will of course do this with the power turned off and the trigger lock activated and the battery removed. I'm going to do it with a battery on the tool just because it stands up and it's better for filming, but for safety purposes I've put on a battery that is no bloody good anyway. So let's go. Yeah, open her up first. Bam. Get your roll of wire. You need to make sure you put it in the right way, of course. So you want the jaggedy bits or the pointy bits, whatever you want to call them, over on the right hand side there, like so. When you pull the cover back over, this will go in and help lock your wire over, like so. But before you do that, of course, you need to thread your wire through. Always got to make sure it's that way around, of course. If it's that way around, your wire's feeding up from the bottom and ain't going to work too well. You want the wire coming over the top. So get your wire, unhook it, try not to let it unravel like a bastard. Cut this end bit off. Want this nice and straight. You don't want to bend in it because you might jam it up somewhere. Then before you thread it through, you have a button here. You need to push this in and lock it with the side lever. It will lock automatically, like so. To release it, push it on there. Easy. When you activate that lever and button, you'll see it opens up these gears here. See? So you lock that in place, like so. And then you can thread your wire through. Just fire in. And you want to thread it all the way out to the front. And you want it to hang out the front by around ½ an inch, 10 to 15 mil, somewhere in that region, so that you get the right cut. There we go, it is now hanging out the front here. We can now pull this over, release our lock, and we should be ready to go. Now, never stick your finger in this end, of course. I shouldn't have to say that, obviously, but this piece here stops you from being able to access the tying off area with your finger. If you've got that open, the tool will not operate. Now these are the areas here that I said about with the rapid fire type, or rapid tie I guess you'd call it. When you're tying a heap of rebar and you don't want to pull the trigger every time, you can just push it up against there, bang, it'll tie it off, release it from there, it'll stop. Always make sure it's gone through its full process of cutting and then twisting before you remove it, though else you're going to be in a world of annoyance. Same with when you pull the trigger, make sure it goes through the full cycle and stops before you take your finger off the trigger. Else you're going to be getting in there with a pair of these to solve the stuff up you've got in the end here. Right, let's go tie something up. Now because I can't go out into the real world at the moment due to that little bug going around, I can't do a big job or anything with it, but I do have some things I need to do around here, so I'm gonna do that. Can't do any long-term test with it, but we'll just show you how it works, eh? First I think I'll just try it on the bench here, so we can do it under laboratory conditions and get a close-up and all that sort of thing. Whether you have it on the rapid tie mode or the single actuation with the trigger mode, whichever one you put it on, the next time you turn the tool on it will be set on that same setting, so just keep an eye that you've got it on the right setting and don't end up bumping it, because you bump that, woof, away goes your wire. You want to be ready to go. So we're going to start it on the single actuation mode. Now, did you see that? It just got the tool ready, it cut the end off, it's now primed, ready to go. We've got it on the single actuation. I'm going to start it on setting 1 just to show you how this works, and we will then fiddle around with it until we get it tying just right. This is 16mm rebar, that's 5/8 of an inch. There is of course 2 pieces there. We're going to put our tool right round, like so. Now you want to be pushing down as hard as you can. You're on a 45-degree angle here, and then I'm going to pull the trigger. And there we go, we are tied. You just got to be careful you don't hook it on there when you pull it apart. Now as you can see, not quite as pretty as you might be able to do it single-handedly, but certainly done the job. It has wrapped around a total of 4 times. It's much thinner wire than you would do if you were doing it manually, but like I say, 4 times, so that's pretty good. And tightness wise, that's not bad. A little bit loose. Now the reason it does the 4 wraps is, as you can see, we've got a couple of tails sticking off here. When it wraps around and cuts those 2 ends there, it can't find those 2 ends and then twist them together like you would manually. They're left sort of hanging in space. So that first sort of half a wrap isn't really doing a lot. Having these bits sticking up like this isn't actually a fault of the tool, so don't worry about that. Now, that was setting 1, which is the loosest setting, which is pretty good, but not tight enough. So if you want to do another one, bend over your wire there, get it out of the way. You don't want the hook to catch in there and try and twist that up again, so you're going to get all tangled up. We'll set our tool on the base here to number 6, and we will wrap it the other way around, like so. So that should be good and proper stuck there now. Still a little bit of wiggle in it. Now as you can see, it does 2 pieces of rebar like this perfectly fine. And what happens if we stick another one next to it? You can do a maximum of 3 16mm rebar. Any more than that, you're not going to fit your tool over, and your wire's not going to tie up properly. When you're tying these, just make sure that they're tied properly, they're not broken anywhere. If they are broken, just release the tension a bit on the tool until you've got it set exactly the way you want it for the application you're using. Now you want to know how many ties you get out of this thing, don't you? It's about 120, I think, per reel, and you can buy them into boxes of up to 50. So 50 rolls of wire. And when you finish one of those boxes of wire, that's when you need to clean this thing out, about every 50 rolls. 6 amp hour battery will give you around 6,400 ties according to Makita. I'm not going to be running that many through it to test it, but that's quite a lot. You know, you're not going to be going through too many batteries in a day, are you? This is another one of those tools that fits into the very cool category. Really cool. And if you've ever tied hundreds of meters of rebar together with ties manually, you'll know that your fingers and your wrists and just crouching down, your back, your knees, everything just goes to shit. It's a painful job and not something I ever really want to do again. I think I've done my dash with having to do that stuff, and it's not fun. It's not fun on the hands. And when you're doing it by hand and you over tighten one and you break it, it's just like, oh no, gotta do it again. Whereas this, it's like, not a big deal. 0.8 of a second to tie one. Now I've seen guys do these manually, and some guys are super good at it. I mean, they can do them so fast. But 0.8 of a second, that's pretty good. I'm certainly happy with that. Right, I'll go and actually tie something that I need tied instead of just wasting all this stuff here on the bench. These rolls of wire aren't cheap, but I'm not really going to give you a price because it's going to be different everywhere on the planet, and that's why I generally don't give prices for anything at all, because it makes no sense to give prices on YouTube videos, okay? It's probably only going to be valid the day you say it, and only in one particular tiny region of the world, so what's the point? But in New Zealand, you're looking at around $10 a roll if you buy them in bulk. So $10 per 120 of those. It's not cheap compared to doing it manually, but boy oh boy, it's going to save you a heap of time, which will of course save you money and save your fingers and your back and everything else. But I would be interested to know just how often people have problems with them, how often any parts break or you have to replace them for wear and tear or anything like that. Let me know down in the comments if you use one of these all the time, what you think of it long term, because I'm not going to be able to do a long term test of this because I don't have enough rebar to tie and it's not my tool. I've got to give it back to somebody else. So someone's always using a lawnmower when you want to film. Very cool. Nice and solid. It's good. A little bit of movement there, but happy with that. So it doesn't leave the prettiest of ties, but who cares? It's buried in concrete, right? But before I go pour some concrete, let's check out. Now I've got the setting in the continuous mode, so I will pull my finger on the trigger and then actuate the tool just by contacting it with the front. So you can whack through them pretty quick like that. Not sure how easy it is to see on the camera, but there is quite a lot of metal in there, filings. So that's why you got to clean it out. It is, yeah, it's quite a lot in there for the amount of work I've done with this tool. A bit tricky to see though on this shot, on this angle, where that particular part is. This tool is a true time saver. It is just so quick and so easy and just, oh, it's going to save your hands and your back and so much time. If you're interested in other rebar stuff, take a look up here. I need to make a playlist, a Makita Rebar tool playlist. So if you've got one of those cutters and one of these, you can whip through your rebarring pretty quick. Your rebarring. But I'm afraid I can't do much more with it because, yeah, unable to leave the place at the moment. One day someone's going to look back on this video and think, why was that? It's a little thing called COVID. So that was just a quick one, guys. I would love one of these, but for me, the expense is just a little bit too much for the amount of times I do rebar tying. It'd be cheaper for me to just pay someone else to do it. Or hire one of these things, I guess. I guess some places hire them out. It's definitely something that should be hired out. Although, getting hired out, they probably get abused a fair bit and would need a lot of maintenance. I haven't got another different brand to compare it to, so I don't know whether it's heaps better or heaps worse or the same as every other brand. Who knows? Not my forte, I am afraid. But that's another Makita review to add to the list. If you like Makita tools, I do tons of reviews on this channel. Please consider subscribing down below, especially if you are into the new 40 volt stuff. And thanks again for watching, and I will see you on another Makita video next week, no doubt. Maybe it won't be a Makita one. Maybe I'll put something else out. Probably be a Makita one though, eh? Let's face it. Okay, thanks guys. Whoa! It stands up alright, but it is just slightly back heavy. You didn't have a roll of wire in it, probably be alright, but yeah. Just be careful standing it around the place.